For the observers, just a scheduling note. Next week, we will continue to have our office hours that we've started here recently. So there will be office hours next week at on Monday and Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern. So 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern PM, 7:30 PM Eastern will be our office hours next week, Monday and Wednesday. And also next weekend, we have a new offering sponsored by MCC, which will be a webinar for anyone thinking about or potentially interested in teaching for one of the major online ESL companies. I will put some information in the chat after our class, so definitely check in with the chat right after class. I will go ahead and post that the information, but that will begin next Saturday, August 7th. And yeah, so very excited about some of the new things that hopefully will help you all on as you continue your TEFL journeys. Okay, now to the meat of tonight. So, class, we have been working on constructing our arguments, right? So far we did an overview and we learned the different parts of the argument. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been taking a deeper dive into each particular part of our argument. So last week we worked on our claims. And so for homework, I asked each of you, oh, let me go ahead and share my screen really quick. Sorry, one moment. Okay. All right. So, last week we started with the claim, and for homework, I had you all look into making your own claims. And so everyone mostly submitted their claims, but just as a small reminder, there were a couple of you who I commented on what you submitted, and I asked that you resubmit a new claim because either it wasn't complete or it was one that we had already used as an example in class. So if I set a comment to you that way, please make sure to resubmit that. And the reason why that's important is because we will be using the claims that you all wrote for homework to build our arguments. And so, as we move over the next 2 weeks, we're going to further discuss the reason, the evidence, warrants, and acknowledgments. And each week you'll be adding each part to your claim. So now that you have a claim, each week now we're going to continue adding to it. Now, that brings me to I know some of you wrote all the pieces to your argument for last week's homework. But I'm hoping that after these next couple of classes and you learn more information about what each part should look like and what we should write and what each part should include, you can update those and use the different requirements and that we learn in class. So good job to those of you who worked a little bit ahead and went ahead and tried to draft your own parts to each argument. But as you learn more, just update those each week for the homework. Okay? So let's get started. Okay, so last week we worked on the claim. Today, we are going to get started with the reason. So before we go into the reason, is there anyone who could tell me what is a reason? What is the reason? Do you remember from a few weeks ago? What is the reason in our argument? How about Robert? Get us started, Robert. What's the reason?
Reason is your topic. And, uh, Re-
Yeah, so I think the claim is probably your topic, but the reason is why you think that
oh,
or why you are stating that claim. So let's look a little bit more into that. That's okay. We're going to learn about it right now. So, reasons. Providing the reason. So, reasons are statements that support our claim. So, when we think about a reason, it's really answering the question, why do you say that? Why are you making that claim? So, for instance, one of the claims that we've talked about is that either some people think college athletes should be paid, and others think that college athletes should not be paid. And so, can anyone remember, just give me one example of a reason why we've discussed that college athletes should be paid? Who remembers a reason that we thought of? Zach, what about you? Do you remember a reason? Why should athletes get paid?
Because they have to uh their lack of money to buy their clothing or some things they need.
Okay, so they should be paid because they need money to buy things like supplies for school, maybe other expenses that they have just to live. So maybe clothing or food. They need money for some of these things that their scholarship doesn't provide them. So that's a reason. It's a reason why they we would think they should be paid. So that is a good reason. So reasons also can be supported by evidence. And so that's going to be something else we talk about today. But when you give a reason for a claim, it shouldn't just be something that you just say or think of that has no real reason that it is supported or that you can't support with some type of information. So our reasons should be good enough to where they can be supported by evidence. Okay. And just as you did so well, Zach, you used the word because. So usually our reason can be linked to our claim using the word because. So when I asked Zach, what was the reason or what is a reason why we think college athletes should be paid? The first word he said was because, and then he followed it by his reason. So oftentimes that's how we can identify what the reason is in an argument because a lot of times we will state our claim and then we will say because and we will finish that sentence. So let's now take a look at some good versus bad reasons, okay? So, some bad reasons. Because it's always been that way. Or another bad reason. Let's zoom in a little bit. So a bad reason. Because it's always been that way. Or another bad reason. Because I said so. So, can anyone think of what's wrong with these reasons? Why are these so bad? Elvis, why do you think these are so bad?
because you can't use evidence to support it.
Yes, that is exactly right. Because you can't use evidence to support it. If someone says because it's always been that way, I don't know, I can't, there's no evidence there. There's nothing that I can look at. And furthermore, in that particular argument, even if we wanted to prove that that is true, it would be very hard to go back to the beginning of time to know that something has always been that way. So that's definitely not a very good reason. And the same thing for because I said so. Well, you said it, but where is the evidence? How can I support what you've said? So therefore, those are reasons why we can't use those as a reason. Those are bad reasons. So let's take a look at some better reasons. All right. How about Nathan? Can you take a read the first sentence there for the better reasons?
Twinkies taste better than other snack cakes because of their texture, their creamy filling, and their golden appearance.
Okay. So, just before we think about anything else, this already sounds like there's a little more detail there. It's not just saying because I said so or because that's just the way it is. It gives very specific details that we're looking at. So when you make the claim, Twinkies taste better than other snack cakes. Why do you think that? Why did you say that? We said that because of their texture, their creamy feeling, and their golden appearance. So we give three reasons why Twinkies are better than other snack cakes. And those are very specific reasons. And we can use evidence to support those because we could get Twinkies and we could see, okay, how is their texture? What does it look like? Do Twinkies have a golden appearance? Do they have a creamy filling? We can actually support what you said as a reason through evidence. Okay. So how about our next one? Abner, can you read our second example?
Okay. Dance music is popular with young people because the fast beat and rhythms help them satisfy their needs.
Their need to move. Okay. So again, in this one, if we think about this sentence, we're giving some very specific reasons why dance music is popular with young people. Why did we say that? Why do we think that? Well, we think that because the fast beats and rhythms help them satisfy their need to move. So we can also have evidence of this. We can interview young people and figure out if that's why they like music. We can also do studies or reports about younger people and most young people or a majority of young people wanting to move and wanting to be active. And so there are ways that we can support that reason with evidence. So that's one of the key ways that we can know if our reason is a good reason. Can it be supported by evidence? And also, does it answer that question? Why? Why are we making this claim? Why do we think the way that we do? Okay. So as we continue our look into these five different parts, sometimes the reason can get confused with the evidence because the reason is the why we think this, or why is this important to us, or why are we stating this claim, whereas the evidence gives the proof. So the evidence is how we show that what we are saying is correct, or we give evidence that what we are saying is valid, that we have that our reasons are good and that they can be supported. Okay? So let's look next at, let's take a look at some good versus bad. So you decide. Okay, first up, good or bad? Let's decide on these reasons. So here we go. Nathan, take the first reason. Could you read that one for us?
Because it was given us a way to communicate, travel, and do business around the world more efficiently.
All right, more efficiently. More efficiently.
Efficiently.
There you go, efficiently. So we can do it a little bit easier, spend less time doing it. Maybe it's quicker. We don't have to wait as long. And so that's what that word efficient means, efficiently. Okay. So what do you think, Nathan? Is that a good or a bad reason?
It is a good reason.
All right, very good, because we can look at this and we can prove it. We can use evidence to support this. So we could use evidence to show that business is able to happen more efficiently. We can use this to show that we can use evidence to back up our reason that travel is more efficient. So we can support that with evidence. Okay? How about our next one? How about our next one? Winston, take our next one.
Because I like it so much.
All right, good or bad reason?
Bad.
Yeah, bad. That one's not so good. No way to prove that. I mean, you like it, so I suppose that is enough, but where's the evidence? If whatever we're stating, it can't just be because you like it. Where's the evidence that it's a good thing? It can't just be because you like it or because you said so. Okay? All right, Joshua, our third one, please.
Because the most re- reputable medical organizations have tested this theory.
Okay, so because the most reputable medical organizations have tested this theory, what do you think? Is that a good or a bad reason?
I think it's a good reason.
All right. It's a good reason. It's a good reason because we can look at the tests that the reputable medical organizations have completed. We can look at those as evidence to support our claim and to support our reason. So we can actually get those tests and show others what these medical professionals have shown in their studies through their tests. Good job. And last but not least, let's have Robert. Can you go ahead and read number 4?
Because sometimes things work well and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, so good or bad reason?
Bad.
Yeah, bad. Because in this case, I think in this case, it's less because we can't prove it with evidence. I mean, because of course we could look at some things working well, and we could look at some things that don't work well. But really, that's an obvious and sort of something that everyone knows. It doesn't really bring anything new to the table. We all know that sometimes things work well and sometimes things don't work well. And so that's really, it's just that that's always true. It's not really anything, it's not really a good reason for a claim that you're making, because that's just like saying, because sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're sad. Well, Of course, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. It doesn't really give us a good reason for an argument. So very good. So now, all right. So now what I want to do is you all will have an opportunity to give me a reason. So let's look at these. All right. How about Abner? You take number one. So what I want to do is I'm giving you the claim and I want you to give a reason. And when you give the reason, even if you don't know maybe the exact reason, because I try to think of things that you might be familiar with, but if you don't know the particular reason, think of what makes a good reason, and then we'll go with what you think makes a good reason. So it doesn't have to technically be the exact reason. So go ahead and try. Number one.
Football is the most popular sport around the world
All right. And what would be a reason? How could you finish that sentence by adding the reason to it?
because many people like it.
Because many people like it. All right. Now, the one thing I will say about your reason is because now that is a pretty good reason. It is something that we can prove, but a way that we could have made that better is to say maybe many people like it, or to say instead more people like it than any other sport. Do you see the difference there? The difference there is that with our evidence, we can definitely support that reason because I can show statistics or data that shows maybe a survey of people, and it shows that more people said they like football than any other sport. So I can prove that with evidence. And so that would be a way to make that reason a little better, is just to specify maybe that more people like it than any other sport, not just that a lot of people like it. Because many people like it, but that doesn't that's yeah, it's popular. Many people like it, but it's a better to maybe compare it to something that we could then use our evidence to support. All right. So let's do number two. How about Zach? Number two.
Every country should have laws requiring citizens to wear their seatbelt while riding in a car. Uh, because it can protect citizens safe.
Yeah, so because it can keep citizens safe, or if you want to use protect, you could say because it protects citizens from injury, or it helps to protect citizens from injury. So one of those two options. You want to try that one more time? Just say that sentence again, but with try one of those options.
Uh, every country should have laws requiring citizens to wear their seatbelt while riding in a car to protect the citizens from injury.
Injury. Yeah, to protect the citizens from injury. So now, evidence. We can back this up. We can show maybe statistics or studies that show people not wearing seatbelts and what happens to them, and people wearing seatbelts and what happens to them. Or we could even look at some statistics or some data that would show the number of people who were killed in a car accident without seatbelts versus the number of people who have been killed in an accident wearing a seatbelt, and we could show that those numbers are lower. So that's a way that we could then use evidence to support our reason. Okay, number 3, Elvis.
Everyone should protect and others from COVID-19 by wearing a face mask because the study tells that wearing a face mask can reduce the opportunity to catch COVID-19.
Oh, excellent. Fantastic job. Fantastic job, Elvis. That is that was a very good reason. And we will learn in just a moment more about the evidence even that you started to supply in your reason. And we could show that as evidence. So great job there, Elvis. Good job. All right. And number 4, Winston, number 4.
Living in a countryside is healthier than living in a city because the the air in the countryside is clear, more clear than in a city.
Okay, it's more clear than in the city. So the air is more clear, it's clearer, so it's less polluted. So the air is less polluted in the countryside than in the city. And so, yeah, exactly. In evidence, we could back it up. We could show our studies, or we could get data or test the air quality in the city versus the air quality in the country. And we could show that as our evidence. So good. Yep. Very good job there. All right. So that is our reason section. Okay. So we'll make sure that for your homework this week to go ahead and add a reason or update your reason if necessary that you already created with the claim that you submitted. All right. So let's move on to evidence. Okay. So now we've had our claim, we've stated our reason. Now let's talk about evidence. So evidence is what we use to support our claim and reason. So it's used to convince the audience that your claim is correct. Okay. So for instance, in our last example that we just read, we said that it is healthier to live in the countryside than in the city because the air is clearer, it's cleaner than in the city. So now the evidence is what tells everyone that what we just said is correct. It's how we can give validity. It's how we can make our argument, the one that we're making, the claim that we're making. It's how we can tell everyone that it's correct. What I'm saying is right, and you should believe the same thing. So, in the case of should college athletes be paid? Our evidence should convince other people who maybe think they shouldn't be paid. Our evidence should help people decide that yes, they should be paid. So our evidence is used to help convince others that our argument is correct. Okay? So some key things about evidence. It should be reliable and based on authoritative, trustworthy sources. So what does that mean? What does that mean that it should be supported by a reliable, authoritative, and trustworthy source? Nathan, what do you think? What does that mean?
You have to suppose to the claim and your reason.
Yes, that's true. Our evidence does support our claim and reason. But now, if we think about just the evidence, what does it mean if evidence comes from a reliable or trustworthy source? If I said, Nathan, you are very reliable and trustworthy, what would I mean by that? Okay. So when we say reliable or trustworthy, those two words mean that the person we can trust them because of maybe their experience. So maybe they have a lot of knowledge or they've studied the topic. So we can trust or believe what they say. That's being trustworthy. And being trustworthy is something that you earn through telling the truth and through maybe your knowledge and experience. And same thing with reliable. So reliable means that I can count on you. If you say that you're going to do something, I can trust that you will do it. So that is what being a reliable person is. And last, an authoritative. Authoritative. So that word means that it comes from a place of authority. And authority are people like maybe our a government organization, maybe a medical professional like a doctor or a nurse, maybe in your school it's your teacher or your principal. These are authoritative figures. And so when we speak about good evidence, we want it to come from good sources. So let's just think, if I make a claim, could I or should I use, let's say I make the claim that that all citizens should wear seatbelts. It should be a law. Do you think that I should ask my 5-year-old brother and use his answer as evidence in my argument? Would that be a good idea? Mm-mm. No. So that's what I mean by a reliable, trustworthy source. You want to have a source of your evidence that comes from somewhere that people respect and that you can trust that the information that you received is valid. So we have to be very careful when we are using evidence because we want it to always be trustworthy and from a reliable source, okay? Now, secondly, we want to always explain its significance to our audience, okay? So the significance, does anyone know that word? Significance. What is the significance of something? Significance. Yeah. All right. So significance is, why is it important? If something is significant, it means that it is very important. So if your evidence has significance, or if your evidence is in, you have to tell your audience why your evidence is important, why your evidence really should, like why they should take your evidence seriously. And so this could be as simple as telling people where you got your evidence from. So if I say that scientists from the University of California have tested this theory. They've been working on these tests for the past 10 years and they finally know the results. That's telling our audience the significance. It's telling them that we have scientists, which most people trust scientists or really pay attention to things that have been studied and tested by scientists. And we're also showing the significance, the importance, because we said they've been working on this for 10 years. So that shows that they have spent a lot of time really thinking about this and testing this. So it's significant. And the last thing about evidence is that if you present more than one piece of evidence, always start from general and become more specific. So, in the case of our seatbelts, and let's say I was going to provide evidence for our seatbelt claim. I may start by providing evidence on a national scale. I might say in the United States, there have been 1 million traffic accidents. And for those wearing seatbelts, they were only injured 5% of the time, whereas those without seatbelts were injured 20% of the time. So that's very general, that's very wide. But then to further support my claim, I may provide more specific evidence. So then I may say that speed is also a factor. And so of those accidents where 5% of people were injured, the majority of those were at speeds above 100 kilometers per hour. So I took it from a very general, this 5% of people have been injured, and I brought it to something very specific, that of those 5%, they were all driving very fast. So that it even further supports my argument that, look, these 5% of people, even though they were wearing seatbelts and injured, it was because they were going really fast. So if they weren't going so fast, they would not have been injured. And so that is taking a general piece of evidence and making it more specific. And so if you are going to present evidence in your argument, start with the big stuff and then get smaller, more specific. Okay? So let's look at some examples or some types of evidence. All right. So we have 4 types of evidence. Okay? Facts, statistics, quotes, and examples. All right. So these are our 4 types of evidence. All right. So let's learn just a little bit more about those. So let's start with the facts. Oh, I don't like the way that looks. Let's go back. Okay, let's start with the facts. So facts are details that cannot be disputed. Okay, so facts are things that are always true. If it's a fact, there's no other answer. It just is what it is. That is, it is true all the time. Now, I have a note here that facts should not be confused with a truth or with truths. Okay? So what's the difference? A truth is an idea that is believed by many people but can't be proven. It cannot be proven. So, in the case where you give a reason or you give evidence that can't be proven, but you just think that, you really can't prove that it is correct, but most people think it's correct. That's not really good evidence, or it's not a fact. It's just a truth. And we really should not use truths as our evidence. Evidence should lean more towards facts, things that are true and can be proven. Remember, our evidence, our main thing is that we can support it, can be proven. We can show it to support our claim. So we want it to be proven. We want it to be able to be proven. Okay, so an example of a fact. The legal age to vote in the US is 18. That's a fact. It just that there isn't a way to dispute that because that is the age that we are allowed to vote is at 18. And so that's a fact. It's not something that's just believed by people. It is a fact. Right? Okay. So next we have statistics. Statistics. So statistics are where we have amounts and numbers that are concrete and support our claim. So this is when we start to use those numbers and in amounts of things. So let's take a look at our example. Over 61% of Americans are overweight. That is a statistic because we're telling a figure, an amount. Earlier, when I gave my fake example about seatbelts, and I said 5% of accidents have led to injuries of those wearing seatbelts. That's a statistic. A statistic. So it's a figure, it's a number that we can use to support our claim and our reason. Now, the one thing to know about statistics is to make sure that it comes from a good source. Okay. Sources are important. So our statistics shouldn't come from unreliable or untrustworthy sources. So in our example where I mentioned our little 5-year-old brother, we would not want to use our 5-year-old brother's statistic that is he talked to 5 of his friends and they all liked Twinkies. We should not use that as evidence to support our claim that our brother has talked to 5 people and all 5 liked Twinkies. That wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be a good statistic because it's not from a reliable source. It's not from a trustworthy source. Okay. So next, quotes. Uh-oh, didn't go forward. There we go. Next are our quotes. So quotes are statements from experts or authorities in their field that supports your position. So this is where we start to use our resources for who we get our information from. So we may speak to someone who's at a very high position or is in a very reliable position. So we might quote a doctor. We might quote a scientist. We might quote a lawyer or a judge for something that we're in the legal system. We may quote a police officer. We may quote a senator or a government official. So quotes come from, again, what's the main theme of where we get our evidence from? Reliable, trustworthy, authoritative sources. Okay, so our quotes also want to be from there. So again, we're going to keep using our 5-year-old brother. We wouldn't want to use a quote from him. He is not a reliable source. We have determined this. So look at our example. Dr. Kenneth P. Moritsugu, U.S. Surgeon General, described long-term problems associated with underage drinking. Research shows that young people who start drinking before the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol-related problems later in life. So he is the Surgeon General, which the Surgeon General in the United States is the country's lead, the head doctor, the head medical professional for the country. And so that is a very authoritative source. It is a very reliable source. And so we can quote them. we can quote that to support our argument. All right. And last but not least on types of evidence are our examples. All right. Examples. So examples come from your own experience and they can enhance your meaning and also engage the audience. Now, examples don't have to be only from you. You can tell examples from other people or other situations that maybe weren't exactly from you, but examples can really help engage your audience, and also it can help your audience relate to what you are saying, especially if you use examples that your audience is familiar with. So, when using examples, try to think about who you're speaking to or who your audience is, and try to use examples that they would know or have a connection to. So, here's an example of an example. Um, After living in Iceland for a decade, I can honestly say that people are kind and warm. And so this is interesting because we do often say, and we've said before, that our opinions, or just saying because I like it or because I said so, that those aren't good reasons, right? But the difference between that and an example is because in the example, we are telling through our lived experience, this is something that we have found to be true. And we can be credible if our experience leads us to that conclusion. So this person has spent time in Iceland. So they can say, I've been there. This is my experience. And so they can say that. But it wouldn't be very good evidence if we just said, I've heard the people in Iceland are warm and kind. How do you know that? You've heard that, but you haven't experienced it. You haven't been there. And maybe if you were talking to people who had been there, you could quote them so that then you can give them and make them your reliable source. All right. So, our four types of evidence, just to briefly recap, we have our facts, statistics, quotes, and examples. Okay. So, for your homework this week, as I've mentioned, I want you all to start building the next parts of your arguments. And I must say, I'm looking forward to hearing some of your arguments from your claims that you submitted. These are going to be very interesting arguments. So, what I would like you to do is similar to last week, you're going to write the reason and you're going to find two pieces of evidence. So, everyone needs to have two pieces of evidence. Okay. And try to make them two different types. Maybe you can get a quote and an example. Maybe you could have a fact and a statistic. But try to have more than one type of evidence, but you need at least two. And so this might take a little research to find a statistic or to find a quote. This might take a little research, but come up with and find two pieces of evidence to support the claims that you made from last week. Do any of you have any questions about the homework? Okay.
Okay, could you stop sharing?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Just some words to say to the students. The lesson may be difficult for you now, but this type of training will be very helpful, very practical, useful in your high school or college education. So be patient, study hard, do your homework, and you will improve. And Quentin, do you want to tell your webinar information? Because I saw some observers join us later, okay?
Yes, yes. And so for everyone on the call, the observers, I'm going to send some information in the chat right now. But there is we're My Culture Connect is sponsoring a webinar that I'll be putting on, which will go through if you're interested in working for some of the major online ESL companies, so like VIP Kid, Magic Ears, Bling ABC, or Preply. We will be having a webinar on different aspects of that. So just how are they different? How are they similar? How do you get booked? What is the hiring process? And so it's going to be a 4-week series, and I will put more information in the chat right now.
Okay. Thank you so much. Students, please unmute your microphone. Say thank you, Teacher Quentin.
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you,
Quentin.
teacher.
Thank you,
Teacher
teacher
Quentin.
Quentin.
Okay.
Yes, good job today. And you all, I've read some of you who have already submitted some reasons. You're doing well. So just keep on the same track because what you've turned in so far, you're doing a good job. So I know it's difficult. It's an advanced topic, but you're doing a good job. So keep it up.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good
All
night.
right, bye.
Bye.